Malay is a major language of the Austronesian family. It has an official status in Brunei, Malaysia, Indonesia and Singapore. It is spoken by 270 million people across the Strait of Malacca, including the coasts of the Malay Peninsula of Malaysia and the eastern coast of Sumatra in Indonesia, and has been established as a native language of part of western coastal Sarawak and West Kalimantan in Borneo. As the Bahasa Kebangsaan or Bahasa Nasional of several states, Standard Malay has various official names. In Singapore and Brunei it is called Bahasa Melayu, in Malaysia, Bahasa Malaysia, and in Indonesia, Bahasa Indonesia, and is designated the Bahasa Pasachen, Pemersatu. However, in areas of central to southern Sumatra where the language is indigenous, Indonesians refer to it as Bahasa Melayu and consider it one of their regional languages. Standard Malay, also called Court Malay, was the literary standard of the pre-colonial Malacca and Johor Sultanates, and so the language is sometimes called Malacca, Johor, or Rai or Malay to distinguish it from the various other Malayan languages. According to Ethnologue 16, several of the Malayan varieties they currently list as separate languages, including the Orange ASLI varieties of Peninsular Malay, are so closely related to Standard Malay that they may prove to be dialects. There are also several Malay trade and Creole languages which are based on a lingua franca derived from Classical Malay, as well as Makassar Malay, which appears to be a mixed language. Origin. Malay historical linguists agree on the likelihood of the Malay homeland being in western Borneo stretched to Bruneian coast. A form known as Proto-Malay language was spoken in Borneo at least by 1000 BCE and was, it has been argued, the ancestral language of all subsequent Malayan languages. Its ancestor, Proto-Malayo-Polynesian, a descendant of the Proto-Austronesian language, began to break up by at least 2000 BCE, possibly as a result of the southward expansion of Austronesian peoples into maritime Southeast Asia from the island of Taiwan. History. The history of the Malay language can be divided into 5 periods. Old Malay, the transitional period, the Malacca period, late modern Malay, and modern Malay. It is not clear that Old Malay was actually the ancestor of Classical Malay, but this is thought to be quite possible. Old Malay was influenced by Sanskrit, the lingua franca of Hinduism and Buddhism. Sanskrit loanwords can be found in Old Malay vocabulary. The earliest known stone inscription in the Old Malay language was found in Sumatra, written in Palava variant of Grantha script and dates back to 7th century, known as Kejikan Bucket inscription. It was discovered by the Dutchman M. Battenberg on 29 November 1920, at Kejikan Bucket, South Sumatra, on the banks of the River Tatang, a tributary of the River Musi. It is a small stone of 45 by 80 centimeters. The earliest surviving manuscript in Malay is the Tanjong Tanah Law in post-Pallava characters. This 14th century pre-Islamic legal text produced in the Aditya Varman era of the Dharmasraya kingdom, a Hindu-Buddhist kingdom that arose after the end of Srivijayan rule in Sumatra. The laws were for the Kerensi people who today still live in the highlands of Sumatra. From the island of Sumatra, the Malay language spread to the Malay Peninsula. The Malay language came into widespread use as the trade language of the Sultanate of Malacca. During this period, the Malay language developed rapidly under the influence of Islamic literature. The development changed the nature of the language with massive infusion of Arabic, Tamil, Hindi and Sanskrit vocabularies, called Classical Malay. Under the Sultanate of Malacca, the language evolved into a form recognizable to speakers of modern Malay. When the court moved to establish the Johor Sultanate, it continued using the classical language. It has become so associated with Dutch Ryoor and British Johor that it is often assumed that the Malay of Ryoor is close to the classical language. However, there is no connection between Malaccan Malay as used on Ryoor and the Ryoor vernacular. One of the oldest surviving letters written in Malay is letters from Sultan Abu Hayat of Ternate, Maluku Islands in present-day Indonesia, dated around 1521 to 1522. The letter is addressed to the King of Portugal, following contact with Portuguese explorer Francisco Serrao. The letters show sign of non-native usage. This is because the Ternatians were, and still are, using a completely different language as native language. The Ternate language, a West Papuan language. They use Malay only as lingua franca for inter-ethnic communications, classification and related languages. Malay is a member of the Austronesian family of languages, which includes languages from Southeast Asia and the Pacific Ocean, with a smaller number in continental Asia. Malagasy, a geographic outlier spoken in Madagascar in the Indian Ocean, is also a member of this language family. Although each language of the family is mutually unintelligible, the similarities are rather striking. Many roots have come virtually unchanged from their common Austronesian ancestor. There are many cognates found in the language as words for kinship, health, body parts and common animals. Numbers, especially, show remarkable similarities. Within Austronesian, Malay is part of a cluster of numerous closely related forms of speech known as the Malay languages, which were spread across Malaya and the Indonesian archipelago by Malay traders from Sumatra. There is disagreement as to which varieties of speech popularly called Malay should be considered dialects of this language, and which should be classified as distinct Malay languages. The vernacular language of Brunei Malay, for example, is not readily intelligible with the standard language, and the same is true with some varieties on the Malay Peninsula such as Kedah Malay. However, both Brunei and Kedah are quite close. The closest relatives of the Malay languages are those left behind on Sumatra, such as Minangkabau with 5.5 million speakers on the west coast. Writing system. Malay is now written using the Latin script, although an Arabic alphabet called Arab Melayu or Jawi also exists. Rumi is official in Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. Rumi and Jawi are co-official in Brunei only. Names of institutions and organizations have to use Jawi and Rumi scripts. Jawi being used fully in school, especially the religious school, Sekolah Ugama, which is compulsory during the afternoon for Muslim students aged from 6 to 7 until age 12 to 14. Efforts are currently being undertaken to preserve Jawi in rural areas of Malaysia, and students taking Malay language examinations in Malaysia have the option of answering questions using Jawi. The Latin script, however, is the most commonly used in Brunei and Malaysia, both for official and informal purposes. Historically, Malay has been written using various scripts. Before the introduction of Arabic script in the Malay region, Malay was written using Palaver, Kawi and Rencong script, and these are still in use today by the Kampa in Vietnam and Cambodia. Old Malay was written using Palaver and Kawi script, as evident from several inscription stones in the Malay region. Starting from the era of Kingdom of Pasai and throughout the Golden Age of the Sultanate of Malacca, Jawi gradually replaced these scripts as the most commonly used script in the Malay region. Starting from the 17th century, under Dutch and British influence, Jawi was gradually replaced by the Rumi script. Extent of use. Malay is spoken in Malaysia, Brunei, Singapore, Indonesia, parts of Thailand and southern Philippines. Indonesia and Brunei have their own standards. Malaysia and Singapore use the same standard. The extent to which Malay is used in these countries varies depending on historical and cultural circumstances. Malay is the national language in Malaysia by Article 152 of the Constitution of Malaysia, and became the sole official language in West Malaysia in 1968, and in East Malaysia gradually from 1974. English continues, however, to be widely used in professional and commercial fields and in the superior courts. Other minority languages are also commonly used by the country's large ethnic minorities. The situation in Brunei is similar to that of Malaysia. In the Philippines, Malay is spoken by a minority of the Muslim population residing in Mindanao and the Sulu archipelago. However, they mostly speak it in a form of Creole resembling Sabah Malay. Historically, it was the language of the archipelago prior to Spanish occupation. Indonesian is spoken by the overseas Indonesian community in Davao City, and functional phrases are taught to members of the Philippine Armed Forces and to students. Phonology. Malay, like most Austronesian languages, is not a tonal language. Consonants. The consonants of Malaysian and also Indonesian are shown below. Non-native consonants that only occur in borrowed words, principally from Arabic and English, are shown in brackets. Orthographic note. The sounds are represented orthographically by their symbols as above, except N is ny, N is ng. The glottal stop is final, K, or an apostrophe. T is C, D is J, is psi, X is KH, J is Y. Loans from Arabic. Phonemes which occur only in Arabic loans may be pronounced distinctly by speakers who know Arabic. Otherwise they tend to be replaced with native sounds. Vowels. Malay originally had 4 vowels, but in many dialects today, including Standard Malay, it has 6. The vowels e, o, are much less common than the other 4. Orthographic note. Both e and e are written as e. This means that there are some homographs, so parang can be either paren or peran. Some analyses regard I, O, oi as diphthongs. However, I and O can only occur in open syllables, such as kukai and pulau. Words with a phonetic diphthong in a closed syllable, such as bike and laut, are actually 2 syllables. An alternative analysis therefore treats the phonetic diphthongs I, O, and oi as a sequence of a monophthong plus an approximant AJ or and OJ, respectively. There is a rule of vowel harmony. The non-open vowels I, E, U, O in bisyllabic words must agree in height, so hidung is allowed, but asterisk hedung is not. Grammar. Malay is an agglutinative language, and new words are formed by 3 methods. Attaching affixes onto a root word, formation of a compound word, or repetition of words or portions of words. Nouns and verbs may be basic roots, but frequently they are derived from other words by means of prefixes, suffixes and circumfixes. Malay does not make use of grammatical gender, and there are only a few words that use natural gender. The same word is used for he and she or for his and her. There is no grammatical plural in Malay either, thus orange may mean either person or people. Verbs are not inflected for person or number, and they are not marked for tense. Tense is instead denoted by time adverbs or by other tense indicators, such as sudah, already, and belum, not yet. On the other hand, there is a complex system of verb affixes to render nuances of meaning and to denote voice or intentional and accidental moods. Malay does not have a grammatical subject in the sense that English does. In intransitive clauses, the noun comes before the verb. When there is both an agent and an object, these are separated by the verb, with the difference encoded in the voice of the verb. Over, commonly but inaccurately called passive, is the basic and most common word order. Borrowed words. The Malay language has many words borrowed from Arabic, Sanskrit, Tamil, Persian, Portuguese, Dutch, certain Chinese dialects and more recently, English. Examples. Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Basic phrases in Malay in Malaysia and Indonesia. To greet somebody with "Selamat pagi" or "Selamat sehat era" would be considered very formal, and the borrowed word "hai" would be more usual among friends. Similarly, "bye-bye" is often used when taking one's leave. However, if you're a Muslim and the Malay person you're talking to is also a Muslim, it would be more appropriate to use the Islamic greeting of Assalamu alaikum. Muslim Malays, especially in Malaysia, Singapore and Brunei, rarely use Selamat pagi, Selamat siang,
Selamat petang, or Selamat sore, as widely used in Indonesia, Selamat malam, or Selamat tinggal jalan, when talking to one another.